A very early morning in late November in Manhattan with nothing going on can be peaceful for anyone. 3 a.m. in such a busy city may be the most peaceful time for such a large city. However, November 30th in Manhattan, one of the most heavily researched cases in UFO community occurred. Let me set the stage for all the creatures listening. 2:30 a.m. You've been tossing and turning all night. Tomorrow is such a huge day for you, so you need some sleep. After minimal thought, you decide a quiet drive with some fresh air is what you need. You get outside into your geo tracker because fuck the Prius drivers. Anyway, you're on the almost deserted street and just driving the back roads to get a view of the bridge. Approaching the perfect view of this bridge, the tracker dies. Odd for a few reasons. Mainly, the only things that can kill this vehicle is rust and abuse. You attempt to get in the old tracker, or you attempt to get it going again, but she won't turn over. A strange light catches your attention up in the air. What you see makes you think one of two things. You're still in bed and you're dreaming, or two, you fucking lost it. A strange bluish glow illuminating the top of an apartment building. But what is it in the glow that's so disturbing to you? There in the light is a woman floating in tandem with three strange beings. You're not sure how much time has elapsed, but with you staring dumbfoundedly, you promptly attempt to start the tracker back up to scoot the fuck out of there. The tracker lives once again, and you vacate the premises back to the safety of away from there.
Hello there, friends, and welcome to the Paranatural Podcast. My name is Ben.
And I'm Marvin Gaye.
No, you're not. You do not make romance music. You're Jake. And tonight, we are so glad that you could join us as we talk about the Brooklyn Bridge UFO abductions. Jacob, how the hell are you doing tonight, buddy?
Oh, I would tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
Well, then tell me. Anyway.
Wow.
Dude, Jesus, getting dark right off the bat here.
This is just the positivity coming from you just gives me diabetes. You're so sweet.
You know, it's all jokes, but I can't help it. Sometimes I just have a dark sense of humor.
So do I. I just hide most of it for the podcast.
Yeah,
the Patreon's where you hear the real shit.
Oh, nice segue. Speaking of the Patreon, Jacob, we have a new Patreon member to thank.
Really?
We do. I didn't even tell you until just now.
You didn't.
So, we would like to give a big shout out and a great big thank you to Emily K. I won't say her last name just in case.
Kadar.
Oh,
Kadar.
okay. Never, he'll say it. Fuck. I'm trying to be nice. Yes, Emily Kadar has officially decided to support us on Patreon, for which we are extraordinarily grateful. Thank you very much.
She told me she would. You're a saint. Love you.
I will agree with that, even though I don't know who you are. So thank you, Emily. And if you, like Emily, would like to support us, $5 a month on Patreon, you get some extra content, and I'll send you stickers, and we'll shout your name out on the show. So, you know, patreon.com/paranormalpodcast. That's where it's at.
Yeah. And for all of you, what is it, 6 or 7 now?
Yeah, something like that.
So much love goes to you.
Hell yeah,
including
you are
us,
the goats.
because we're Patreon members too.
And if you would like to support the show, but you can't afford or don't want to spend the $5 a month on our dumbasses, then do us a favor. Share the show with a friend. Tell everybody you know about how cool we are. And tell them to listen to our show. And we would appreciate that too.
I have a question for you, Benjamin.
Yes.
Seeing as how I am just like so into everything our website and everything does,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What's this whole buy me a coffee shit?
Oh, that's I forget we have that. So if you would like to make just a one-time donation, then you can click on our Buy Me a Coffee link and select just how much ever you want to give us, like $1 or whatever, just one time. Where Patreon's a monthly subscription, Buy Me a Coffee is you can just give us $1 or something.
This ain't 1999. Coffee costs more than $1 now.
Okay, but if two people, then we still get a coffee.
All right, so we need 2 people for 1 coffee. So
Look,
we need
let me
4. I
explain
want a
it to
coffee
you.
too.
Let me explain this to you like I did to my girlfriend. Okay, coffee might be like $9 if you go to the fancy dancy Starbucks, and it might be $1.79 if you walk over there to the Speedway. But if you make it at home, it's still like 68 cents.
Yeah, depending on your blend. Sorry, Riv was
fucking Folgers. What do you mean
door.
depending on your blend? The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Fucking.
Well, you got Folgers. You got. Everyone makes coffee nowadays. You got Death Wish that makes you just shit bullets.
Look, homie, I'm a po white boy. All right, I can't be affording no Death Wish Black Rifle bullshit. This house, we drink fucking Folgers, bro.
Folgers? Is that even the cheapest you can go? I think Maxwell House is the cheapest you can go.
Well, my old lady got a raise. I got a promotion. We can afford Folgers now. Okay.
Are you going dark roast?
No, just regular. If I went dark roast as shitty as I make a cup of coffee, you die before you actually drank the goddamn thing.
That's the thing. Coffee needs to be chewable.
That mine is. If I put it in that coffee pot out there, it is fucking chew. You could pave the driveway with that cup of coffee.
Yeah. My coffee, when I make it is like 8 drops of water and then about 12 scoops of grounds, and I just drink it with a spoon.
Oh yeah, you're better off trying to eat the fucking carafe, all right, than drink what's inside of it.
Yeah. I just do one better, put about 10 filters in there. So it keeps a little bit of the water and just pull the filters out and eat it like a bowl.
Just cereal bowl that shit right into the old gob. Oof.
And this is our episode on coffee.
All right. Thank you for joining us. This has been Coffee Talk. I'm going to get a button for when we derail. It's just going to be a train horn.
Or what would be funny, the interrupting cow thing. Get get how South Park used to make their cows sound in like the first 2 seasons.
There you go.
Moo.
Moo. And even further derailment has occurred. All right, Jacob, tell us about the Brooklyn Bridge abductions from the UFOs and the aliens and the guys and the whatnot.
Well, what I find peculiar about what you just said is you said abductions.
Yes. You didn't know about the rest of them?
Oh, I did.
Okay.
I did. It's just this story is pretty much based on the Linda part of it, but I will get into the other ones. Okay. So it looks like it's 2 syllables, but somehow I'm still going to butcher this. Linda Cortile. Cortile?
When I read it, my brain said Cortile.
Cortile.
Yeah.
That sounds all right.
I'm not sure how it's supposed to. It's not a real fucking name anyway.
Yeah, it's an alias. It's her other name somewhere in my notes. Napolitano?
Yep, Napolitano.
Yeah. All right. Napolitano. Linda Napolitano with the alias of Cortile. So basically, as I gave you a little brief indication of what was going to happen in the intro, she gets abducted.
By the aliens.
Yeah, and right now, a few times.
Spoiler alert. Anyway.
Yeah. Now, before I get into this, I just want to send a middle finger to her husband, because this mofo can sleep through anything.
That's real.
Yeah. So
that dude is like a hibernating fucking bear.
yeah,
He's out of it the whole goddamn time.
Yeah, he has no part in this. Well, okay, he does because he sees one of the abductees. So, November 30th, 1989, Linda is in her room and she gets woken up, and in the original story I read, she sees one person at the end of her bed, or what she thought was a person at first. Then she sees better that the looks are a little bit off. Bigger head, small frame, looks just different enough not to be human. And she decides she's gonna scream, but before she can, the way she puts it in their language, they tell her, be quiet. And apparently she listens because she said she doesn't scream, even though she wanted to. Then she's floating through the air in tandem with 3 of these critters and a blue light towards a giant spaceship that I was pretty happy about this because it was different. It opens like a clam. That's what she said.
Yeah. It like separates in the middle.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. A little bit weird, but sweet. So she enters this clamshell, and the way she describes it, like, everyone views aliens in one of 2 ways. Either they're just like basically how Fire in the Sky, the movie, portrayed them, like disgusting, everything slimy, so on and so forth. They're just destructive assholes. But then you've got the other people who think everything's going to be so technologically advanced and like beyond our comprehension. This, we meet in the middle, and she sees benches that look like benches. She sees tables, she sees chairs, lights, and approaching this big table, she knows they're going to want her on there, but she doesn't want on there. And apparently these guys don't realize what no means because they force her on the table, and she starts screaming her head off, which she should have done to awake her husband so he could have a bigger part in the story. But so she's screaming, and she hears what sounds like I gotta find it. She spelled out what it sounded like, and it kind of cracked me up. It's like gweekle.
Gweekle.
Yeah, gweekle.
Oh.
And so yeah, it says that, and she takes that as it means be quiet because, well, they shut her up with their hand. And that seems to do the job. And they start doing experimentations in her nasal cavity, which apparently were so excruciating she loses consciousness. And
are we sure it wasn't just a COVID test? I'm serious. Last one I had, I can't do math no more. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. Well, the COVID Q-tip broke off inside of her nose. And yeah, so it's so painful she loses consciousness. And this kind of pissed me off a little bit. She says she awoke like 3 hours later in her bed next to her sleeping husband. Now, for anyone who sleeps, which is at least 60% of the people who listen to this.
Okay, we'll go with that.
You have no idea how much time has passed when you sleep. Like, you can literally fall asleep for 5 minutes and you might think it's morning, or you can sleep for 10 hours and think it's been 5 minutes.
That's not true.
Liar.
I have a very good internal clock, most of the time, no matter how long I've been asleep, I can wake up and tell about what time it is just when I wake up.
All right. So I'm going to science at you for a second. Those who are so set on a schedule, which I know you are because you wake up at like 3 a.m. because you're not a morning person.
Mm-hmm.
You're so used to doing that because you've been doing it for however long you've been on first shift. Like, I guarantee you still wake up at 3 or 4 on the weekends when you don't have to work, right? At least wake up enough to be awake.
Usually, yeah. Like enough to register, okay, you can go back to sleep now.
Yeah.
But even then, if I do go back to sleep, when I wake up the second time, I still know about what time it is. Like I can tell you it's 7 or it's 9 or it's, 6:30 or whatever.
All right. Well,
now I get your point. For the most part, you can't be sure. And I, with my really good internal clock, do have those times when I wake up and I'm like, oh, fuck, it's got to be time to get up. But it turns out I was just sleeping really deep and it's only like fucking 1 a.m. and I got a few more hours to go.
Yeah.
That does happen.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, she said 3 hours had passed.
But are you sure she didn't just look at a clock?
All right. So you mean to tell me she awakes to see someone standing at the foot of her bed and she's like, holy shit, what time is it? And she looks at the clock and then she gets abducted and then she's back and she's like, holy shit, I was abducted. What time is it?
So I know you were not born in 1989.
Neither were you.
Yes, I was already alive. I actually
but you
remember.
weren't born in 1989.
I remember things from 1989. And one of the things that I'm going to bring up right now is the giant ass alarm clocks that they had in 1989. The letters were bright fucking red and 4 feet fucking tall. Okay. It had a radio on it. It had a snooze button on it that was like fucking, it looked like a space bar on a computer. Big motherfuckers.
All right. But you're telling me that you wake up to someone at the foot of your bed when you know someone should not be there, and you're going to be like, even if the clock's behind them, you're going to look past them and register, okay, it's 3 a.m. I'm about to get murdered. So
I'm saying the part you haven't brought up yet is that a lot of these memories came back to her through hypnosis.
Okay. Fair
enough. She may have, under hypnosis, had such clear memory of it that even a look in the direction of the clock, that would let her know what time it is under hypnosis anyway.
That's true. Okay, fair enough. So all this happens and, she gets a hold of Mr. Budd Hopkins and tells him the incident, and he asked her if she would be willing to do hypnotic regression, which she agrees, and then she starts remembering more and more. So she said she wasn't taken out of the window, but she was taken through the ceilings of like her apartment plus the ones above hers.
That must have been uncomfortable.
You would think. Although I did see something, since you want to science at me and I'm going to science at you. There is like a 1 in 80 million chance that if you slap a table, the molecules of your hand and the table will miss and your hand will go through the table.
So, yes, theoretically speaking, that's possible.
Yeah, so
because everything's just made of atoms. Nothing is actually solid.
Yeah, so that's exactly what happened to her. She got beamed up, Scotty.
I mean, there is no way that I could sit here and say that extraterrestrials do not have the technology to phase matter through matter. I don't know. They might.
They probably do.
There's a lot of stories that are very similar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and I forgot to mention that all of her doors and windows were locked.
Well, of course, it was New York City.
Yeah, that's why they took
in the late
'80s.
Like,
So, uh, she said she didn't float exactly. She was standing on nothing. She said she could still feel that she was standing, but she was standing on nothing.
That's kind of splitting hairs for the definition of float, isn't it?
Well, so it was the other accounts of the people who saw her that described it as floating. She said she remembered going into the light, and then under the regression hypnosis, she remembered standing on nothing going through the ceilings. So then that's also when she sees that the spaceship opens like a clam.
Mhm.
And yeah, so she says she recalled seeing a lot of benches and sliding doors as she was brought down a hallway. Many lights and buttons were also prominent in her field of vision. She was eventually placed on a large table, the one she didn't want to go on, and when she saw it, she felt her fear rising inside of her as she started yelling and screaming, and that's when it politely shoved its hand over her face.
It politely said, "Shut the fuck up."
That's exactly what she said. Now, Benjamin, we're gonna get into my favorite part of this story. Richard and Dan. Do you want to say who they are, or do you want me to do the boring part, and then we can both do the fun part?
No. Go ahead.
All right.
This is your show, buddy.
It's our show. It's just my episode.
What's your episode? I'm just here to play devil's advocate and push buttons.
Yeah. So Richard and Dan, they're okay. So Hopkins got this communication, a letter from two men who identified themselves as Richard and Dan. No last name. This is probably alias, but they claim to have seen the whole abduction. And they originally said they were New York police, but they changed who they were as the story goes on. They changed from regular policemen to bodyguards to the UN Secretary General. Yeah. I don't want to try his third last name, so I'm just going to do the first two. Javier Perez.
Mm-hmm.
So they also said they had apparent CIA connections, and that's why they should be trusted. Yet they couldn't give like all the story. They never said it was Javier Perez. They just said they were bodyguards to a UN person.
So pretty much everything Richard and Dan claim, we're just going to put a big old
allegedly
right there on them.
Huge allegedly.
Yes. These guys are definitely sus.
Ben,
I did that just for you, baby.
Don't you dare. I'm quitting this podcast.
I will turn this podcast around right now, mister.
Yeah. You add the other syllable. Pecked.
Picious?
Okay.
They're definitely picious.
They're definitely very picious. Which they get fucking wild as the story progresses.
Yeah.
So River is just making such weird noises. Okay. So they claim they were driving beneath an underpass on FDR Drive when their vehicle stalls, which River shush when so they're driving a limo. River won't stop.
That's fine.
Okay.
If you hear any strange noises, it's just the three-legged dog.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to turn you up so I can't hear her. Okay. So they're driving a limo, and it dies under the underpass. I thought they were always called overpass, but whatever. So they look up because that's what you do when a vehicle stalls, and they see a huge what, Ben?
I usually look at the vehicle and go, "The
No,
fuck are you doing, bud?"
that's silly. If a
Next time
vehicle
I'm gonna look
stalls,
up because maybe I'm missing something.
yeah, especially with a new car. Um, they see a huge disc-shaped UFO. Even more unbelievable, they see a woman followed by 3 creatures that were floating through the air.
But it kind of sounds sexual, so I'll roll with it, okay?
Intergalactic foursome.
Yes. I seen that on Pornhub. Anyway,
I would not doubt that.
I wouldn't
At
either.
So once on board, the object in question, the UFO, full of this galactic orgy, it would descend at a frightening pace into the East River near Pier 17. Both men were greatly affected by the encounter, and they were receiving some very questionable orders as to what to do about it, but they broke away from what they were told to do, which was keep quiet, and they got a hold of Budd. So let's fast forward 2 years. Well, a year and a half. And late April of 1991, both men kidnap Linda. They abduct her because she's good at that. And they literally drag her ass into a car when she's walking down the street.
Oh. We do not condone such behaviors here on the Paranatural Podcast. Just throwing that out there.
But it is an easy way to get answers. So they interrogate her for several hours, and they accuse her of having some involvement with recent events around the area. Mainly just because they want her to talk about abduction, but they have to seem like they have a viable reason to abduct her. So they released her without hurting her or anything, but it messed with Linda, as it would most people.
I would fucking think so.
Right. That's the birthplace of daddy issues right
Just
there.
get snatched up by a couple of strange dudes.
Yeah, but they just want to be friends. So
nobody ever taught those guys how to make friends.
So now we're getting near the actual 2-year anniversary of her getting abducted by real, like, aliens, not just these assholes. And an even more unnerving event took place. So this time, Dan would kidnap her on his own accord. He decided to take her to a safe house, a CIA safe house. There's
Allegedly.
heavy quotes in that. Yes. And so he convinced her that she was in some sort of threat because she was abducted by aliens. Like, that's what Dan convinces her of. And so she starts freaking out about that. Plus Dan being off his rocker, and she escapes somehow. She never clarified how, but she didn't escape for long. Dan recaptured her on the beach next to the CIA safe house. And, Richard arrives at the nick of time. This time he has a freaking halo above his head because he's a great guy now. Because Dan is in the sea holding her, attempting to drown her.
See, the version of that I read was even worse.
Okay, tell me.
He was trying to
Do you have a bow chicka wow wow button?
I don't want to hit any such button for this because it was non-consensual bow chicka wow wow, okay? Which, no, motherfucker, no. No.
So was he?
That's the version of it that I read.
Oh. Well, maybe this is just trying to make Dan not seem like such a piece of shit.
It is better to drown someone than do the non-consensual bow chicka wow wow, yes.
Unless you're gonna Ted Bundy that shit. Was it Ted Bundy who had sex with the dead bodies?
No, that was Jeffrey Dahmer.
Damn it. All right. Jeffrey Dahmer, I meant. So he saves her and he sedated him, which that's up for your imaginations, whether he like jumped in with a chokehold or some tombstone
poked
pile
him with
driver.
a needle or
shot him with a non-lethal gun,
tranquilizer dart.
Yeah, or shot him with a baseball bat. But
he sedated him anyway.
Yeah, so Richard gets her back home, and she's again quite shaken. And a month later, Richard comes and has a talk with her. So, according to Linda, he informed her that Dan was dangerously obsessed with her and her alien encounter, and he was in a mental facility where he would be for the foreseeable future. Now, nobody really knows if Dan and Richard were real. Nobody knows if any of what has been said about them is true. Like, it's all on speculation. But Linda's husband, son, and a friend of Linda's did vouch for her, saying they have met Richard. And he went by Richard when they met. So, around the same time, some crazy stuff is happening. Other witnesses are starting to get in touch with Budd. Oh, I forgot to ask. Do you have anything else to say about our dear Richard and Dan?
There was actually quite a bit. So, there was actually an entire book written just about this by Budd Hopkins called Witnessed, the true story of the Brooklyn Bridge UFO abductions. And in it, he gets into a lot of shit. So, according to that book, Richard and Dan had also been abducted by aliens and had met Linda on the spaceship. Okay. And during their meeting on the spaceship, allegedly, Richard and Linda started a little, like, affair. Okay. And these abductions had gone back for years, to the point where Richard thinks that possibly he might be the father of Linda's oldest child. The fucked up part about that is, under hypnosis, Linda confirmed all that. She, under hypnosis, remembered seeing Richard and Dan, and I want to say I think he was the Secretary General guy.
Yeah.
DeCarlo Guido, or whatever his last name is.
Carlo Guido?
I can't remember what it is.
It's Javier Perez.
Yeah, we'll just go with that.
Javier Perez de Cuellar.
But anyway, now that's interesting. However, I want to take a moment to say something about regression therapy hypnosis. I do not believe that every regression session is tainted. However, in those scenarios, you are talking about a very, very suggestible person. So leading questions can make a person agree with a story that may or may not be true. There is a lot of suspicion surrounding regression hypnosis, is what I'm saying.
So I would like to also add to that. in my own way because I love South Park. There's an episode where Cartman, he thinks he's the hero, like he remembers things differently, and down the rabbit hole he convinces himself more and more to where that becomes his actual truth. So when he's asked about it, like, it's actually a real study, like people who are suggestive or like if you take Veggie Tales here, if you take a little lie but you keep adding that little lie, like your brain will think that you are telling the truth eventually.
Yes,
So,
you
like,
can actually convince yourself that something that is not true is true. As a matter of fact, arguably, all of our memories are fallible.
not mine.
You can see something, and you could like I've heard this example used, a car accident. So one person will witness a car accident, and they'll report to police what happened. And then someone else who saw the very same accident will report to the police what happened. Their versions may be very close, but there will be details that are different. Neither of those people is lying.
Right.
They just perceived it differently. They remember
the
it.
Telephone.
Yep, exactly. They remembered it differently. Our memory is fallible.
Yeah, fallible.
And yes, under hypnotic regression, you are susceptible to suggestion, and leading questions can lead you to invent memories that you will then think are 100% true, but may or may not be.
So to you, they're true, but in reality,
it's not true at all.
Flip of a coin. Right, yeah. So, yeah, regression. Although, I don't know. I want to trust regression because it's subconsciously like you answering. It's not where your brain can like think up something at the last second. It's what's there. Regression.
But is it or isn't it?
It is.
And I think it depends a lot on the hypnotherapist. Because if I was the person running the hypnosis session and I said to you, okay, Jacob, describe the color of the table, right? That
Silver.
is a very open question. You would say, okay, you say silver.
I did.
Now, there's a different way to ask that question when I would say, Jacob, do you remember the silver table?
Yes.
Okay, and then I could also say, do you remember the blue table? If I say the blue table, you might then imagine under hypnosis a blue table, and a table that was silver, you now remember as blue.
Or that was a good point you just did, or you saying, do you remember the silver table? Jake says yes. Don't call me Jacob on the podcast. Goodness. Goodness, Ben. And then you ask, Jake, do you remember the blue table? And if I give a simple no, there's wiggle room. You could be like, oh, maybe there was a blue table that they didn't see. Or there was multiple tables.
But what I'm saying is there's just a difference in the lines of questioning. If I suggest a color, you may agree with a color that didn't really exist. So if you go into this with like the hypnotherapist, in this situation, I'll get a little more specific. So let's say the hypnotherapist was aware of Richard and Dan's story of meeting her on a spaceship. Okay? Mm-hmm. So an open question would be, have you met anyone you met aboard the craft? Like in later life. Okay.
Yeah.
That would leave her open to think about it and say, oh, wow, I remember Richard and Dan being there. However, you could ask the question, do you remember meeting Richard and Dan on the spacecraft? That becomes suggestive. So it's all in how you ask the questions. It's all in how you present the information.
Plus, they say if you don't believe you can be hypnotized, then you can't be hypnotized. So they could be acting like they are hypnotized and just like giving answers to spice up a story.
And making up an absolute hoax. Yes.
Yeah. Now, what if, can't believe I never thought of this before. What if like a regression therapist or hypnotherapist were to hook them up with a lie detector test at the same time?
Again, you're going back to that. If as a hypnotherapist you can make them remember something that didn't actually happen, they don't know it didn't actually happen. They think they're telling the truth.
Okay, fair enough. Fair point.
So,
Fuck you.
and now I'm not saying even in this case that the hypnotherapy was bad. I'm saying it has the potential to have been.
Okay.
I've never seen the tapes of Linda's hypnotherapies or heard them or anything, so I don't know what kind of questions were asked.
Is that even available?
I don't know. I know they do exist.
Yeah,
but I do not know where you could get a hold of them. Unlike the Betty and Barney Hill or the TV, unlike the Betty and Barney Hill tapes are very much available.
Oh.
And you can listen to them. These, I don't know.
All right. So that was Richard and Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else to add on Richard and Dan?
They were just really weird fucking guys.
All right. Let's go to Javier.
Javier.
So, according to Hopkins, when he found out who the UN high-ranking official was that Dan and Richard kind of spilled, he believed that he finally had like some big thing where like a UN official saw a UFO. He's gonna like vouch for it. He's gonna open up this.
Oh yeah, he thought he was gonna see an international investigation and they were gonna blow the lid off this thing. Like he was credible now. Oh yeah, for sure.
And well, so this dickhead Javier, he says he said he would not go on record with such a claim.
Right.
Quotations right there. He said if his private confirmation to having witnessed such events ever went public, he would simply deny it. So, as you can imagine, Mr. Budd got all sorts of pissed off about this. Like he was mad because like this we could be living in a different age right now. Like if they would have done an investigation of the proportion that he wanted, we might actually have real viable proof of aliens.
Potentially, yes.
But this guy, he's like, I'm not going to say shit. So, he did understand Javier's position, but he was still pissed. So they had just a face-to-face meeting with no cameras, no recording or anything.
Right, an off-the-record meeting.
Yeah. And Bud says that everything that Richard and Dan said about that night of what they saw was true. So
according to Budd in Witnessed, Javier also confirmed the having been abducted himself and having met Linda on the spacecraft and all of that nonsense as well.
Yep. So yeah, that's basically all I got to say about him. He's a dick for not coming forward. like, I would like to be living in a world where we know aliens exist, even though I know it. But how about Yancey Spence? You remember anything about Yancey Spence?
I don't think so, no. It's been a
Okay.
very long time since I've read, the book that you're referencing because, well, you've had it for a very long time.
I have. My dear Benjamin let me long-term borrow it.
The library of Ben just loaning out fucking books.
I appreciate it. So, witnesses continued to come forward well into the 2000s. That was loud. And several of these witnesses corroborated the same story as to seeing or the presence of a UN limousine, which I got a question. How many Ben, if you saw a limousine on the street, would you be able to be like, oh, that's a UN limousine?
Possibly. Because
At
of the
3
fact
a.m.?
that they are generally convoyed
Yeah,
with
they are.
UN stickered security details.
Oh, yeah. And I guess New York's not a weird place for it.
No, Manhattan would not be. That's where the UN building is.
Yeah.
If you're going to see a UN limousine anywhere, it would be in New York City.
Yeah. So, several of these people say they witnessed that plus the UN limousine on that very early morning in 1989. And a well-known journalist with the New York Post was leaving a bar close to the offices. He realized he was much too drunk to drive. Great thing to add if you're telling such a big story, but too drunk to drive. And
I mean, at least he's being honest about it.
he is, and kudos to you. So he asked one of the other people who worked at the newspaper for a drive or for a ride home, and he got the reply of he was unable to leave where he was because there are several limos blocking the street. And it's believed that in one of these limos sat Javier, Dan, and Richard. So perhaps the most intriguing and possibly the most valuable recollections of those are those of Yancey Spence. There's an article that when I read the name of it, cracked me up. If you remember anything of this, I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna this is your own regression therapy here. The day Manhattan stood still.
That doesn't ring a bell at all, actually.
No?
No.
Oh, I read that and it was freaking hilarious.
I mean, that is a good play on words, though.
Isn't it?
I like it.
Yeah. I cracked up when I read that. But so yeah, he recalled being in the offices of the New York Post building and along with several others witnessing the events as they unfolded. He would also put forward his belief of the abduction of several journalists that evening. So they believe that what happened that November morning in 1989 was there was a mass abduction. So Spence claims that there were many. He was also abducted. He says in the craft there were several people from other buildings and different cars on the road up there, and he stated, quote, maybe the Manhattan abduction was the Manhattan mass abduction. End quote.
And just while we're kind of in the right area to mention this, I don't think we have yet. The reason that this is called the Brooklyn Bridge UFO abductions is because all of this takes place around the Brooklyn Bridge area. Like,
Yeah,
you could see Linda's apartment from the Brooklyn Bridge. People came forward that said they saw her, they saw the craft, they saw the blue light, they saw figures. They couldn't tell from that distance what exactly they were, but they saw humanoid figures floating through the air, all from the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yep.
I just thought I'd throw that out there because I don't think we've explained it yet.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, it is like literally like bridge, and you look over, and like right on the water is
like right on the shoreline is her.
Yeah. So this is where my speculation kind of started taking off tenfold. They say that the spectators only started coming forward so late because they heard the story and then their memory wipe ended. Apparently, they had instantaneous memory loss seeing the event because we had the Men in Black button zappy thing attached to the craft. But yeah, so it came back once they heard about the story, and many people that Spence spoke with, they said when they were asked to remember, they suddenly recalled the events in question. So, while they immediately forgot about it and went on with their days, they're asked to remember or speak forward about it, and poof, it's all back.
So, honestly, that's not uncommon.
Yes, but that's also like, all right, talk to like a 6-year-old kid, and you're like, hey, I saw this in the sky. Did you see it too? If it's interesting enough, a lot of kids will be like, yeah. And then like spread the word like, hey, me and Uncle Jake saw this thing in the sky. And then more telephone game.
I mean, yes, but okay, I'm going to counter that by saying, first off, you're not talking about 6-year-old kids.
7.
7-year-old kids, 8-year-old kids,
8.
whatever.
9.
Second, there is this strange, like, underlying phenomenon to people who have witnessed. It actually happens quite a bit with any sort of paranormal witnessing of an event, but it occurs much more with UFOs. This strange kind of apathy. Like, I'll hear people describe it over and over and over again, where like they're just like, yeah, I saw this really weird like UFO thing and it was hovered in the sky for a while, and then I don't know, I went to bed. Like, it's like they tell you they're making toast. They honestly just don't see it as a thing until you ask them about it. It's a weird underlying phenomenon. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough that you can see a pattern in it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to like see how they're so blasé about it.
It is strange.
Like, I've seen weird shit up in the sky and I'm like flabbergasted about what I see. Yet like these people, their flabbers can't be gasted.
But like I said, that I understand how it's like, what, are you fucking serious? But no, it's like they'll tell you about it and you're like, well, what did you do? And they're like, I don't know, I finished my cigarette and I went back into work. You're like, you didn't tell anybody? And they're like, no. And you're like, don't you think that's weird? And they're like, yeah, I guess so. That is kind of weird. Why didn't I care? Later on, they'll be like, yeah, I didn't fucking care, and that's fucking wild. Why didn't? But at the time, they're like, oh, hey, cool, a UFO. Oh, my toast is done. They don't give a fuck.
A lady in a blue light floating with 3 things behind her or in front.
Yeah.
I don't know how Linda liked it, but I'm just saying, like, that's a little bit more interesting than toast.
You would think
About
so.
the same as a cigarette.
You would think so.
Yeah.
And yet, over and over and over, you will hear eyewitness people just say, yeah, no, I didn't think much of it at the time.
Yeah.
And you're like,
It's
fucking really? Like, I don't
it's
know.
hard for me to believe that. Like I know it probably happens because, like, I don't know whether your mind wants to play it off as something else or, like, you're just like, huh. If I acknowledge this, people will think I'm crazy. I'm just gonna, like, let it.
Yeah, I'm just going to put this in the not thinking about that box.
Yeah. Try to forget file. But
You're also
I don't
not
know.
considering that this is New York City. And
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not,
please.
again, I'm not trying to stereotype anybody.
I
But
am.
people in big cities, and especially like New York, they are
New
very
York.
much used to just keeping their head down. And if the weird shit happens, at least it's over there.
Yeah.
You know
Hey,
what I mean?
hey,
Like,
can I get a hot dog? Holy shit, there's a lady floating.
holy shit,
Yeah,
there's a
bust
lady.
it on that
Yeah,
hot
no, I
dog,
need
please.
busted on that hot dog. You know, like, man.
Lou, you won't believe what I just saw. Look at this fucking hot dog.
Yeah, look at this fucking hot dog. You know, that's fucking New York, dude.
I apologize to any New York listeners who heard my accent because I try, but you guys have an awesome accent. Love it. Okay, yeah, so that's where I want to call bullshit because me being me, if I saw something, I'd be like the freaking SpongeBob Pretty Patties episode. Hey, all you people! I would tell everyone. Be like, Grandma, I just saw a freaking alien. That's weird, huh? I would tell everyone. The fact that these people can see a lady floating towards a UFO and they're like, I like sauerkraut on my hot dog.
Yeah, I don't know.
It baffles me. I would post that shit on Facebook.
Which didn't exist in 89.
Stephen Hawking was behind them. Okay, so I came across this little article on it's ufoinsight.com. And this little piece is called Lies Within Truths about this. So I'm just going to read it for you. You ready?
Yes.
Yes. It is hard to know what to make of the case of Linda Cortile, and the Brooklyn Bridge incident. While Hopkins is surely a genuine researcher and skilled at that, there are those who believe Cortile fabricated parts of the story at best. It is an interesting assertion that one that comes up a lot in both UFO and paranormal circles. Although certainly not the norm, there are many instances of reports of a genuine experience leading to further claims of half-truths, exaggerations, and outright lies. Wow. This is super Polish on a super non-Polish name. George Adamski.
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 And he is Polish.
I figured. Is perhaps most synonymous. Yep. With this type of behavior. There are multiple theories as to why this happens. Some suggest that following the rush of publicity, attention, and sometimes financial reward, some people quickly make up subsequent events to keep such things coming their way. Others exaggerate or fabricate a follow-up event merely because they believe it is what those investigating their case wish to hear or see. Perhaps a good example of this particular case would be a phone call taken by Hopkins, apparently witnessed by his wife at the time, Carol Rainey. I hope I pronounced that right. It looks so easy. When he hung up the phone, his wife asked who he was speaking with. He would reply, Linda, pretending to be Connie. Connie was a witness to a recent event who Hopkins had not mentioned before. When he questioned Linda on this, she claimed her to be her cousin. Hopkins, perhaps suspicious at this point, asked that he might speak or meet with Connie. Several days later, the phone call came. And there's a short video, it says. The short video looks at the above scenario a little closer. It is a short documentary by Rainey. It asked how authentic the witness whose case her then husband had staked his reputation on. I didn't watch the video.
Me either. But that something was said very interesting there, though. That was Linda pretending to be Connie.
Yeah.
So even Budd Hopkins at some point was like, okay, this bitch be's making shit up.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean her initial story is bullshit? Maybe, maybe not. It's really hard to know.
Well, I'm sure Budd had a hell of a lot of skepticisms, but when this type of thing is your life, you're gonna wade through a sea of lies to find a truth.
So there are some investigators who have made their investigations and writing these books and things their life, okay? Budd Hopkins kind of wasn't one of them. This was Budd Hopkins' like hobby and like passion project. Budd Hopkins actually made his living as an artist.
Passion is something to form your life through. Like, eventually, this podcast will make us money to stay afloat because we're passionate.
Maybe.
Oh, I will.
I mean, we're passionate. We are for sure passionate.
Damn right.
Like, we have fun doing this.
I have a blast doing it.
But no, that was Budd Hopkins, like, more of his, like, side gig. Like, his hobby than his actual, like, livelihood. And anybody that says, I hear it so often about the books that get written about these things. You know, they're like, oh, they're hoaxing it for money. Y'all trust me, these books are not fucking bestsellers.
No.
Okay? They're not. And even best-selling authors, the ones that don't get like movie or television, you know, rights sold and shit like that, they're not rich. They're middle-class people because you do not make millions of dollars writing books.
Especially nowadays. Nobody listens to, or nobody reads books. Hardly anyone wants to listen to an entire audiobook.
Right.
Like, they want you to sum it up.
So anybody that says that they're hoaxing it for money because of book sales or some shit like that, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah, like one of my favorite authors, going back in time here, Jonathan Rand.
Mm-hmm.
You know who it is?
Sounds really familiar, yes.
Okay. So he has written, I want to say, over 100 books.
Mm-hmm.
He does Michigan Chillers and American Chillers. He does all the counties from Michigan, like horror stories on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then American Chillers, he does all the states. And then he's also got a book with Christopher Knight called Pandemia, one of the greatest books ever. But like none of that's making movies. And like you go to a library and look for this stuff, like chances are, unless you're in Michigan or like close to where he's from, which is in northern Michigan, you're not going to find these books in a library. You're going to have to like hope that you find them at a book fair or find them online.
Right. Well, I mean, and I'll go you one better. Even Stephen King, he was a best-selling author.
Mm-hmm.
But until he started actually like selling a lot of movie rights for scripts and things like that, dude still taught college English to make ends meet.
Yeah.
As a best-selling author. You know, that's what writers do. So if you think that writing some, you know, alien encounter true to life story is making any money, I would be surprised if it made a profit at all.
Right. With printing costs and all that stuff.
Yeah, I would really be surprised if it, because only weirdos like me fucking buy these goddamn books.
And now that I have Audible
Like,
and borrow Ben's books.
And like when I buy them from fucking thriftbooks.com for like $3.99. Okay. So like, yeah, little hot tip there. If you're looking for some of these weird books like Communion or Fire in the Sky or Intruders or Witnessed by Budd Hopkins, thriftbooks.com. They're not a sponsor. I just buy a lot of shit from them.
Fire in the Sky. Don't watch the movie. Well, you can watch the movie. It's decent, but they changed a hell of a lot just to make it more movie-ish. And
yeah, they really did. But
it's a kind of upper that story did not need, because it's a great story.
That's actually one of the books, like the big time paranormal books, that I don't own. I do not have a copy of Fire in the Sky.
Yeah. I love listening to his interviews. I've listened to like so many, probably 20 different interviews.
Oh yeah, I've heard
Travis
his
Walton
story
talking.
from his mouth 48 fucking times. Like,
yeah, and like he's telling the same story, and each time I am so intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
He tells the exact same story.
But anyway, that is an episode for another time.
Yeah,
and we will be doing
to do that episode. Okay, so so I can't remember where I read this. But our dear Linda here, she claimed 2 months before she got abducted, her child got abducted.
Yep, I remember having read that somewhere.
Yeah, and like
her oldest, specifically,
her oldest,
who's the one who may or may not have been conceived aboard a spacecraft by Richard.
Talk about the Mile High Club, huh?
Jesus, good
one. So yeah, 2 months before she got abducted, he got abducted, and like I can't remember where I read that, but
I'm pretty sure that was brought up in Intruders, actually. And I know it's talked about in Witnessed.
I was trying to find that book, and it's not available on Audible or Google Reads, whatever. Like, I don't know, it's hard to find. I'm trying to find that part, that article.
It's available on Amazon. You can get the hardcover or the paperback version.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I forgot something, and I can't believe I forgot it. I'm a piece of shit. So Linda, she claimed that when they were doing COVID tests to her, something was lodged up in her nasal cavity.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes and gets X-rays, and holy shit, there's something in her nasal cavity.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. Nothing, like I looked at 12 different websites. Nothing said what it was. It's just they said they removed it from her nose.
That's not very helpful.
Yeah, the doctor said something strange was found lodged inside of her nose.
Something strange.
Yeah, it could have been something for Ghostbusters. Something strange in the neighborhood.
Anything that is lodged in your nose that is not a fucking bogey is a strange. There's only supposed to be bogeys up there.
or a finger,
which is just trying to get out the bogies.
or a Lego.
That would be strange.
What? How?
Explainable, but strange.
I think okay. So, I read this little like thing by Walter H. Andrus,
Mm-hmm.
the former international director of MUFON, which I hope everyone knows what MUFON is.
The Mutual UFO Network.
Yes. Even though they're not called UFOs anymore, right?
Not according to the government lexicon, no.
Yeah. So he called Linda's story definitely authentic. And he said it was a definitely authentic case of human abduction by aliens. He says he knows what ETs are after.
Oh, God.
They have been using humans to further their species. Linda's story is familiar to Philip Klass, a former senior editor for Aviation Week and Space Technology magazine, known as the Sherlock Holmes of UFOlogy.
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 UFO is in caps.
Ufology.
Is not.
Ufology.
Ufology. In his 1988 book, UFO Abductions, A Dangerous Game, Klass described the emergence of what he calls an alien abduction cult among UFO enthusiasts. The book examines numerous claims of ETs abducting young children and taking flesh samples and impregnating young women with alien swimmers. That's semen. And then returning to remove the unborn babies for transplant into ET females.
I mean, okay, look. There are a lot of stories about that.
Billy, I got some hard news for you.
But I can't help it but to say that anybody who just comes out and says, I knows what the aliens is doing, I knows why they here, I knows it all, I'm just like, sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up. At best, you have a theory. If you have proof, let's fucking see it. All right? If you don't, you have at best a theory. All right?
So it seems to jump one extreme to the other. Like, men who get abducted, it is for the sake of their semen. It is their little white knuckle children winning the race because they need to impregnate the alien. Women who get abducted are being impregnated. It is one major or the other. Like,
and it all surrounds reproduction. That, I'll give them. And if I remember right, like I said, it's been a while since I read the book. In Intruders, I think, wasn't Linda like pregnant and then got the fetus like taken from her at like 7 weeks or something?
She said.
Yeah, she said.
Yeah. Okay, I found it. This is called skepticism. So, Klass devoted several issues of his UFO Skeptics newsletter to the Linda case, uncovering implausibilities and major discrepancies in her story and its handling by Hopkins. For example, Linda later added to her story that her son had been abducted by ETs 2 months earlier and that the craft that took her crashed into the East River. No such incident was reported by any of the witnesses. Klass said the two alleged security guards, Dan and Richard, have never been found, which
we knew that.
Yeah. Although Hopkins allegedly arranged for them to meet Linda in her apartment, she later claimed that Dan kidnapped her from the Manhattan street and took her to a CIA safe house, and class said Hopkins claimed to have received a letter from the third man who witnessed the incident, the world leader who refused to step forward.
Yes.
Yeah. But apparently Okay, I'll just read it. Hopkins reportedly believed that Javier Perez, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations in 1989, despite mounting evidence against Linda's story, even some MUFON members were skeptical. Andrus called it a case of the century. However, there is much skepticism about, oh man, they got to do it, Napolitano's case. Some people compared it with, oh, whoever wrote this needs to stop. Okay, what does sci-fi stand for?
Science fiction.
This says sci-fiction.
I suppose that's acceptable, but why you got to be a douche about it?
Right. Compared it with sci-fiction novel Night Eyes, originally published on March 1st, 1989, but at the same time, there were 23 eyewitnesses who saw the strangeness in the sky that night.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, where do you put that?
Yeah. 23 people see the exact same thing. Well, 23 people who came forward after the fact.
Right.
So that's not including the maybe fake CIA people.
And then I guess I can't help but ask myself, like, if those what would those 23 people have to gain by saying, yeah, we saw that chick get floated up by aliens? They're not getting famous from saying that.
No, a lot of people think that people will get paid to say shit. But like, look at through history, like the past 70, 80 years. Yeah. Okay. We'll say 50, be safe. Everything that the government does is to just debunk extraterrestrial life. It's like they say UFOs are real, but a UFO, as you said in that very special episode, it can be a red balloon. It just can't. If it's unidentified, then it's a UFO, but it can be a balloon.
I mean, yes, anything. If it's airborne and you're real bad at identifying things, anything can be a UFO.
Realistically, smoke could be a UFO, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah, so like they've been trying to debunk everything. So people think these people are getting paid to say these things. Who's paying them? Like, think Budd Hopkins has all this money to be like, hey, give you $1,000 right now if you say you saw something in the sky. He's the one who's saying, he can literally just be like in his book, 5,000 people saw the same thing.
Right. He can claim that if he wants.
But he's not.
No, and he would produce some names and things, and these people would confirm, yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, and like, honestly, if people are like, yes, I saw it, but I don't want my family to think I'm crazy, don't say my name, but yeah.
Right.
I saw it. It's totally fair.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people care about what people think.
So having studied some of Budd Hopkins' work, I do not think Budd Hopkins is a hoaxer. However, I feel like he may have been susceptible to hoaxers. If that makes sense?
Yeah,
like, he was a very trusting guy up to a point.
Up to a point, yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I think even he doubted Linda after a while and her story.
Oh, with her being her cousin, yeah.
But I don't think Budd Hopkins hoaxed the story. I think he told the story that was told to him.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And like he went around and gathered as much information as he could
He certainly
and then
tried
wrote
to.
his book.
Yep.
So like I don't know. I wish I could know how he asked people, like if he walked up to certain people and like, or I guess he had a credibility at the time, so people approached him on it.
I would think that would be a lot more of it.
And like people before the book came out were coming or going to him telling him that.
I think that's why you see that most of the eyewitnesses have come out since the book, because then they're like, you know,
yeah.
oh shit, here's a book about that. I remember seeing that. Who wrote this book? Okay, I'm going to look that guy up and I'm going to tell him. You know,
Now
hey,
give me
I
my
saw
fucking
it.
hot dog.
Yeah. Let me finish
Yeah.
my fucking hot dog, and then I'm going to call this motherfucker over here, and I'm going to tell him that I seen that UFO, all right? Like,
I think your New York impression has a speech impediment.
I don't do New York so good.
Well, my buddy who I got most of my practice impersonating, I work with him, not anymore, but he said he was going to listen. So if you are listening, shout out to you, Robbie. Your accent is great, and I love how you say hot dog. Cheers me up every day. But yeah, so like with every single UFO case, there's going to be so many different skepticisms that you can see that are in plain view, but there's also things that with a decent amount of UFO encounters, there's shit that you can't be like, there's no way, it's not, nope. Like how so many people came forward after, but there was still people before it was even like thought up, you know?
Right.
Not thought up.
Before
But
the
like,
book was written.
yeah. Yeah. Like there's things you can't debunk. Like some things you just gotta be like, yeah, that's fucking weird.
Yeah.
And I think
Yep.
Budd Hopkins is the kind of person who's like, that's fucking weird. I'm gonna check this out further.
Yeah.
And that's what people need to do. Like, again, Travis. All the people took lie detector tests. And I'm not saying anymore, but like there's certain credibility with these stories that you just can't overlook.
Yeah,
right?
and I think in this case specifically, you look at the initial reported event, right? Which was, you know, Linda being
Linda.
abducted, floated up through the air to a craft. So many people saw that. That do not know one another, don't know who each other are. You know, they reached out independently to Budd Hopkins or he tracked them down somehow. You have to kind of believe that part. Now, could she have made up a lot of shit afterwards? Abso-fucking-lutely. She may have made up Richard and Dan completely.
Yeah, and like the people who said they had met Richard, her husband, her son, and a close friend.
Very well could have been in on it.
Yeah, I could be like,
I
hey,
would
Ben,
hate to
I'm
disparage them in any way, but they might have been. You don't know. I don't know.
It's a possibility.
It's possible. You have to look at it as a possibility.
Yeah, like I could be like, Ben, let's say me and you saw a freaking 9 foot tall dude with reptilian skin.
Right. We could
and
be.
You could be like, okay,
we could make this up together, buddy.
Yeah.
You know.
I guess that's like when people, all right, stereotypical UFO abduction story. 2-3 friends out fishing in the middle of nowhere. They get abducted and they tell their story. People can be like, look, you made this up. You guys are close friends. There's nobody on the outside to say whether or not they saw it too. So, like, sometimes you have to base your whole thing on belief. Other times, there is actual viable proof.
Yeah.
And I think there's too much to this to be debunked.
There are some parts of this, like I said, the initial encounter, I kind of believe that part.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of it afterwards that I'm going, I don't know about that. You know, like
with a shit ton of people getting abducted and then like asking to remember, and they're like, poof, memory's back. I don't think a shit ton of people got abducted, especially not a shit ton of people who work at the newspaper.
I don't know about that part. I'm gonna sit on the fence about that part.
All right, you sit on that fence,
but
I hope it's an uncomfortable fence
because I have neither seen anything to prove or disprove it.
Okay, so my basis for calling horse shit on this is that claim happened after the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, who nobody corroborated what he said, like the people that he said got abducted, they either said no or they just wouldn't want to talk to press. Which, yeah, but you're gonna be like, there's always that guy in a workplace that's gonna be like, hey, I fucked a Bigfoot. You saw it, didn't you?
Maybe in the workplaces where we work, but you're talking about journalists who are public figures. They might just not want to talk about it.
They believe in Spider-Man.
Fucking Christ. J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, I was trying to remember his name. I knew it was Jonah Jameson, but I couldn't remember the J.
Jonah Jameson.
A true hero.
He of the mustache.
He was a true hero.
He is a mustachioed man.
Who brings in the pictures of Spider-Man?
I don't know. They come in the mail.
What a hero.
What a hero.
Bit of a dick, but a hero.
For sure.
That's all I got on Linda.
And that's about all I got on this one too, buddy.
Yeah. It's a fun story.
Except I invite anyone listening to this, if you're curious, look up the story for yourself, figure it out, see what you believe and what you don't believe.
And tell us.
Yeah, let us know. Get in the Facebook group or whatever. Like, we're in there. You can tell us what you guys think about it. We're always curious to hear that.
Yeah. I'm tired of like 90% of the time nobody listening, except for our one guy who responds to everything. I love you, man. Thank you.
That would be Dave. Dave, you're a real one.
Yep.
We love you, buddy.
You
from the Blue Ribbon Lounge podcast. So give those guys a listen to.
Yeah. You're awesome.
Free shout out just because Dave is cool as fuck.
Yeah.
Their show's good, but Dave is cool as fuck.
He posts on the Facebook, and yeah, we ask everyone who listens to post on the Facebook, and he does. You're a champ.
All right. On that note, I will say, if you enjoy the show, do not forget to tell a friend. We thank you so much for listening, for supporting us, for all that good stuff. We hope you enjoy it. And good night.
Check under your bed, folks.
For Lindas who lie about being abducted by aliens.
About damn time.